My children abandoned me thinking I was useless. You're just a burden now. But when I built a successful business in my 60s, they came begging me for money. The day my children called me useless, I was wearing the bracelet I'd pawned my wedding ring to buy for Ashley's graduation. That morning, while preparing their favorite meals one last time, I'd noticed my grandmother's leather-bound recipe book peeking out from the top shelf. Its worn spine held more than just recipes for Sunday roasts and holiday pies. It contained her closely guarded secrets for natural healing balms and soaps that had once made her the talk of her small town. Before we begin this story of strength and resilience, I want to thank you for being here. If you've ever been underestimated, Eleanor's transformation from a dismissed mother to a successful business owner will inspire you. Her journey from betrayal to building Eleanor's essentials proves it's never too late to rewrite your story. If you enjoy stories of triumph and transformation, don't forget to subscribe. It's completely free and helps support our community. Let's dive in. The kitchen counters that morning had been cluttered with more than just ingredients for their favorite dishes. Hidden behind the flour and sugar sat small bottles of lavender essential oil and jars of dried herbs I'd been experimenting with. Even as I prepared for their visit, my hands smelled of rosemary and mint from my early morning attempts at recreating Grandma Rose's legendary calendula soap. "Mom," Robert began, not touching the food I'd laid out, his eyes scanning my kitchen with barely concealed disdain. I caught him staring at my experimental soap molds, my collection of essential oils, the drying herbs hanging by the window. "What's all this mess?" "Just a hobby," I replied quietly, though in my heart, these ingredients represented something more. They were my silent rebellion against the retirement they had planned for me. Ashley wrinkled her nose at the herbal scents wafting through the air. "It smells like an old hippie shop in here," she complained, waving her hand in front of her face. The same hands I'd once coated in honey and oatmeal masks during our mother-daughter spa days. The irony wasn't lost on me when they pushed that retirement home brochure across my herb-strewn table. They saw a cluttered kitchen. I saw the beginnings of something they couldn't yet imagine. My fingers, still smooth from testing my first batch of hand cream, traced the edges of the glossy paper. "You're just..." Emily hesitated, her eyes falling on the neat rows of sample soaps cooling on the windowsill. "A burden now," Robert finished, his voice cold and businesslike. As they delivered their verdict, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, surrounded by bottles of oils, herbs drying on strings, and the first products of what would become Eleanor's essentials. They saw a burden. I saw a woman on the verge of reinvention. That night after they left, I didn't cry. Instead, I pulled out Grandma Rose's recipe book, its pages yellow with age but rich with potential. Her elegant handwriting detailed formulas for soaps that had once earned her a loyal following among the city's elite. My kitchen, which had witnessed decades of family meals and celebrations, would now witness my transformation. I made a vow then, surrounded by the soothing scents of lavender and sage, my hands deep in a bowl of natural soap ingredients. If they ever returned, they would find more than just their mother. They would find a woman who had turned their rejection into an empire, one handcrafted bar of soap at a time. My first batch of soap cured as I placed Ashley's graduation bracelet in my jewelry box. By the time they realized their mistake, it would be too late. The seeds of my new life were already taking root, nourished by their betrayal and watered with determination. That first night alone in my kitchen, surrounded by herbs and essential oils, I realized something profound. Freedom has a scent. Mine smelled of lavender, sage, and possibility. My hands trembled as I opened Grandma Rose's recipe book, its pages crackling with age and secrets. The first recipe was her signature lavender honey soap, the one that had once drawn aristocrats to her small shop in the 1950s. I remembered her telling me, "Eleanor, dear, true luxury isn't about the price tag. It's about the love you pour into creating something extraordinary." My pension check would only stretch so far. I sold my dining room set, the one Robert had insisted I'd never need again, and transformed the space into my first production area. Each dollar went into essential oils, organic ingredients, and professional soap molds. My kitchen scale, once used for baking birthday cakes, now measured precise amounts of lye and oils. The first batch was a disaster. The second wasn't much better. By the third, I started to understand the subtle dance between oils and alkaline, the perfect moment to add honey, the exact temperature that would yield the creamiest texture. My hands, which my children had deemed useless, developed an intuition for the craft. Late one night, as I wrapped my latest batch in simple brown paper and twine, my neighbor Sarah stopped by. She'd always loved the scents wafting from my kitchen window. "Eleanor, this is incredible," she exclaimed, inhaling the fresh soap's aroma. "You should sell these at the farmer's market. I'm on the committee, I can get you a spot." That Saturday I stood behind a modest table, my heart pounding as people passed by. My soaps looked humble next to the glossy products of established vendors. But then something magical happened. A local beauty blogger picked up my lavender honey bar, closed her eyes as she inhaled its scent, and bought every piece I had. "This isn't just soap," she declared, "this is artistry. Do you have a business card?" I didn't. I had something better. A story. I told her about Grandma Rose's recipes, about creating these soaps in my kitchen, about pouring decades of love and resilience into each bar. He posted about my soaps that evening. By Sunday my phone was ringing with orders. I named my brand Eleanor's Essentials. Simple, authentic, like me. No pretense, just quality. The farmer's market became my testing ground. I listened to customers, refined recipes, and learned what luxury meant to different people. Some loved the sustainable packaging, others the hand-cut designs, but everyone felt the care infused in each product. 3 months after my children abandoned me, I received my first bulk order from a boutique spa in the city. The owner, an elegant woman named Victoria, recognized something in my work that reminded her of the artisanal soaps she'd encountered in France. "There's heritage here," she noted, examining my signature honey lavender bar. "You're not just selling soap, you're selling tradition, authenticity, luxury that can't be mass-produced." That night, as I filled her order, I thought about Robert's dismissive glance at my messy kitchen, Ashley's wrinkled nose at the herbal scents, Emily's silence. Their rejection had become my rocket fuel. Every bar of soap was a testament to what they'd overlooked. Not just my capability, but my passion. 6 months in, I hired my first employee. By month 8, I'd outgrown my kitchen. The dining room wasn't enough anymore. My little business was spreading through the house like a beautiful, fragrant invasion. Local magazines started calling. Boutiques across the state wanted exclusive lines. My simple brown paper packaging was now appearing in Instagram posts tagged #luxury skincare and #authentic beauty. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Each order felt like a victory, each positive review a vindication. My hands, once deemed worthless by my children, were creating something valuable, something desired, something that was entirely, unquestionably mine. The article in Forbes hit newsstands on a Tuesday. 60-something and successful. How Eleanor Mills turned family recipes into a multi-million-dollar empire. By Wednesday morning my phone was buzzing with a familiar area code I'd blocked months ago. I was in my new office, overlooking the production facility where dozens of employees now crafted my soaps, when Victoria, my executive assistant, entered with a peculiar expression. "Eleanor, your children are in the lobby." My hands didn't shake as I set down the prototype of our new winter collection. Instead, I felt an odd sense of calm, like the eye of a storm. "How do they look?" "Robert's in a suit worth more than my monthly salary. Ashley's carrying a Hermes bag, and Emily, well, she looks nervous." Of course they'd come. Success has a way of summoning those who once deemed you worthless. I took a moment to study my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the burden they'd tried to discard. My silver hair was now stylishly cut, my posture confident, my designer outfit a far cry from the apron I'd worn in my kitchen days. "Send them up," I said, "but first activate Protocol R." Victoria nodded, understanding perfectly. Every security camera would be recording, every word documented. I'd prepared for this day since they'd walked out of my kitchen. The elevator dinged and there they stood, my prodigal children. Robert entered first, his corporate swagger slightly diminished by the success surrounding him. Ashley followed, her practiced smile faltering as she took in my transformed appearance. Emily lingered by the door, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "Mom," Robert started, his voice honey-sweet, "you look amazing." "Eleanor," I corrected him. "I go by Eleanor now. In fact, most magazines call me Ms. Mills." Ashley stepped forward, her eyes glistening with well-rehearsed tears. "We've missed you so much. When we saw the article, we realized how wrong we were." "Did you?" I gestured to the plush chairs facing my desk. Please sit. Tell me what exactly you realized. They settled in, exchanging glances. Emily finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. The retirement home. It was a mistake. We were wrong to call me a burden? I finished, watching them flinch. To decide I was useless? My voice remained calm, measured. Wrong to abandon the mother who raised you single-handedly? Robert leaned forward, slipping seamlessly into his business mode. Mom, Eleanor, we want to make amends. In fact, we've been thinking, with your business acumen and my corporate experience, we could take Eleanor's Essentials international. Ashley's social media influence could what? I interrupted, opening my desk drawer. Help promote the products made by the mother you deemed worthless? I withdrew the retirement home brochure they'd left on my kitchen table that day. It was slightly faded now, but the memory it carried remained sharp as ever. Ashley's perfectly manicured hand reached across my desk. That's the past. We're family. Families forgive. Forgiveness, I said, rising from my chair, must be earned. And trust. I walked to the window, looking out at my empire. Trust requires proof. What do you want us to do? Robert asked, an edge of desperation creeping into his voice. Whatever it takes, we'll do it. I turned back to face them, my expression unreadable. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. The seeds of my test were planted and they'd walked right into the garden. Because proving yourselves, well, that's going to be quite the journey. Emily's face showed a flicker of understanding, perhaps realizing this wasn't the simple reunion they'd anticipated. They thought they were here to reclaim their mother. In reality, they'd just walked onto a stage I'd carefully designed, and the show was about to begin. The first test began the very next morning. I called Robert into my office, knowing his corporate ego couldn't resist a business challenge. I'm considering a significant investment in a new production facility, I said, sliding a folder across my desk. I'd value your expertise on this. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. This was his chance to prove his worth, to demonstrate his business acumen. What he didn't know was that the investment proposal was entirely fabricated, a carefully constructed house of cards designed to test his character. Meanwhile, I assigned Ashley to our social media department. Your influence could be valuable, I offered, watching her practically bounce with excitement. Her first task, crafting a campaign about family values and authenticity. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emily, the youngest, I placed in product development. You always had the most sensitive skin, I reminded her. Help us create a line for sensitive souls. Her grateful smile almost made me waver. But I hadn't come this far by letting emotions cloud my judgment. Victoria, my trusted assistant, documented every move they made. Security cameras captured their private conversations in hallways. Every email was monitored, every phone call recorded. Robert took the bait first. Within 3 days, he was secretly meeting with my competitors, attempting to leverage his position as my son to broker deals behind my back. The hidden camera in the coffee shop caught him boasting, "My mother's getting old. Soon enough, I'll be running the whole show." Ashley proved equally predictable. She began embedding hidden advertisements in her social media posts, monetizing her mother's heartwarming reconciliation story without company approval. Her phone calls, all recorded, revealed her true intentions. Once I'm head of marketing, I'll have access to everything. But Emily surprised me. She threw herself into product development with genuine enthusiasm. Her suggestions were thoughtful, her work ethic impressive. For a moment, I almost believed she might be different. Then came the investors' gala. I orchestrated a crisis, a fake scandal about contaminated ingredients. As my children huddled in a corner, thinking they were unobserved, their true colors emerged. "This is perfect," Robert whispered, straightening his tie. "Once the stock prices drop, we can help her sell. She'll be grateful for our support." Ashley nodded eagerly. "The sympathy story alone will triple my followers. Devoted daughter helps mother through business crisis. People will eat it up." And Emily, my supposedly reformed youngest, stayed silent once again. Not speaking up against wrong is its own kind of betrayal. I watched them scheme from my office, surveillance feeds displaying their treachery in high definition. Victoria stood beside me, tablet in hand, documenting everything. "Should I initiate Protocol S?" she asked, referring to our contingency plan. Not yet, I replied, watching my children plot their way to an inheritance they'd never receive. Let them think they're winning. The game is far from over. Over the next few weeks I laid more traps. False opportunities for embezzlement. Manufactured chances to undermine my authority. Each test designed to reveal their true intentions, and each one documented meticulously. Robert grew bolder with his corporate espionage. Ashley's social media posts became increasingly mercenary. And Emily, sweet Emily, continued her pattern of silent complicity. They thought they were playing me, but every move they made was choreographed on my chessboard. Every strategic position they believed they were gaining was another step toward their own exposure. As I watched them congratulate each other over lunch one day, celebrating their perceived victories, I felt no pain. Only a cold certainty that justice would be served. The pieces were in place. Soon, very soon, the game would enter its final phase. Victoria placed a fresh stack of evidence on my desk. Photographs, recordings, emails. They're getting careless, she observed. Overconfident. Perfect, I smiled, closing the file. That's exactly where I want them. 2 months into their redemption, my children had perfected their performances. I watched them through the lens of security cameras, each playing their carefully crafted roles with Oscar-worthy dedication. Robert mastered the devoted son act during board meetings. My mother's vision is extraordinary, he'd declare, his hand placed dramatically over his heart. Yet moments later, in supposedly private calls, he'd whisper to competitors about her outdated leadership. The duality was almost artistic. Ashley transformed my office into her personal studio, staging elaborate social media moments. Reconnecting with Mom is life-changing. She'd caption photos of us reviewing marketing plans, her eyes glistening with manufactured tears. The same photos she'd later use to negotiate secret endorsement deals with our competitors. Emily proved the most intriguing performer. She'd bring me tea every afternoon, carefully selecting my favorite blend. Just like old times, she'd smile, her voice soft with seemingly genuine remorse. Yet the hidden camera in the break room caught her rehearsing these moments with Robert, practicing the perfect blend of regret and innocence. They thought they were crafting the perfect illusion. Instead, they were starring in their own exposure. Mom, Robert announced one morning, bursting into my office with practiced enthusiasm, I've been analyzing our Asian market potential. If you'll trust me with the expansion. The way I trusted you with that confidential supplier list? I interrupted quietly, watching color drain from his face. The one you accidentally shared with Phoenix Organics last week? He recovered quickly, his corporate mask sliding back into place. There must be some mistake. I would never. Of course not, I smiled, letting him believe his lie had landed. My mistake. Ashley's performance reached new heights during our charity gala. She orchestrated a tearful speech about family redemption, her designer dress carefully selected to convey humble sincerity. Eleanor's Essentials isn't just a company, she declared to the crowd, it's a testament to mother's love. Later that night, her Instagram live accidentally remained running in her office. Just wait until the holiday collection launches. My followers will make me the face of the brand, and then we can start shifting the narrative away from her outdated image. Emily's mask was the most subtle. She played the repentant daughter with such conviction that sometimes, in unguarded moments, I almost believed her. She kept detailed notes on product development, stayed late to perfect formulas, and never openly plotted like her siblings. But guilt leaked through her performance. She'd flinch when Robert discussed their plans, avert her eyes during Ashley's staged moments of affection. Her silence spoke volumes about her true allegiance. The breaking point came during a late-night executive meeting. Thinking they were alone in the conference room, their masks finally slipped completely. She's getting soft, Robert declared, loosening his tie. All this talk about organic suppliers and ethical sourcing. We need to modernize once we take over. Ashley scrolled through her phone, smirking. My followers are already messaging about how they prefer seeing a younger face representing the brand. The transition will be seamless. Emily traced patterns on the table, her voice barely audible. But she seems happy having us back. Oh, grow up, Robert snapped. We're not back for family dinner, we're here for what's ours. She owed us this after trying to make us look bad. Little did they know their entire conversation was being recorded in pristine digital quality, each word another nail in the coffin of their deception. Victoria stood beside me in the security room, her tablet documenting every syllable. "They're getting bolder," she observed. I nodded, a calm settling over me. "Good. Let them think their masks are working. The grand unveiling is almost ready." Their performance was reaching its finale, but I would be the one controlling the final act. The annual shareholders' meeting seemed the perfect stage for their undoing. The grand conference room at Eleanor's Essentials headquarters buzzed with anticipation. Board members, investors, and press all gathered for what they thought would be a standard corporate presentation. I'd arranged everything meticulously. 3 leather portfolios sat before 3 empty chairs in the front row, each bearing my children's names in gold embossing. Robert adjusted his tie as he took his seat, Ashley checked her makeup one final time, and Emily clutched her tablet like a shield. "Today," I began, standing at the podium, "we're discussing legacy." The projector hummed to life behind me. "But not the legacy you're expecting." Robert's confident smile faltered slightly. Ashley's perfectly manicured fingers stilled on her phone. Emily's shoulders tensed. "3 months ago, my children returned to my life, claiming redemption." My voice carried through the silent room. I'd like to share what that redemption really looked like. The first video played. Robert in the coffee shop with our competitors, his voice crystal clear. "My mother's getting old. Soon enough, I'll be running the whole show." His face drained of color as his own words condemned him. The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Next came Ashley's Instagram livestream mistake. "Just wait until we push her out. The company needs a younger image anyway." She lunged for her phone, perhaps to start damage control, but it was too late. Her carefully crafted social media empire was crumbling in real time. Then the conference room footage. Their late-night plotting, their cruel dismissal of my happiness, their naked greed exposed for all to see. Emily's silence in these moments spoke as loudly as her siblings' active betrayal. The room watched as she repeatedly failed to stand up against their schemes, her complicity clear in her passive acceptance. "But perhaps most telling," I continued, clicking to the next slide, "are these." Email threads appeared. Robert's secret dealings with competitors, Ashley's unauthorized endorsement contracts, financial projections they'd planned to use to force my retirement. Each document meticulously dated, verified, and damning. "Mom," Robert stood, his corporate mask cracking. "This is completely out of context." "Context?" I interrupted softly. "Like the context of calling your mother a burden? Or the context of planning to steal her company?" Ashley burst into tears, real ones this time, not the practice kind she used for her videos. "You set us up. You trapped us." "No, dear." My voice remained calm. "I simply gave you enough rope to hang yourselves. Everything you did, every scheme you plotted was your own choice." The board members whispered among themselves. Journalists frantically took notes. This was no longer a standard shareholders meeting. It was the systematic dismantling of a months-long con. "Emily." I turned to my youngest, who hadn't moved or spoken. "Nothing to add? No defense to offer?" Still choosing silence. She met my eyes for the first time, tears streaming down her face. The guilt there was real, but it came too late. Victoria stepped forward, distributing comprehensive folders to each board member. "You'll find everything documented here. Every betrayal, every scheme, every planned coup." The room erupted in chaos. Robert's carefully crafted business relationships shattered as his duplicity came to light. Ashley's phone buzzed incessantly as news of her manipulations spread through social media. Emily sat frozen, watching her siblings' masks finally crack completely. "This meeting is adjourned," I announced, gathering my papers. "Though I suspect the press will have questions." As I walked out, leaving my children to face the consequences of their actions, I heard Ashley's broken whisper. "What have we done?" The answer hung in the air, as clear as the evidence still projected on the screen behind them. They had orchestrated their own downfall, thinking they were writing my ending. The aftermath hit like a tsunami. By nightfall, every business publication had picked up the story. Family coup exposed. Eleanor's Essentials founder unveils children's betrayal. Robert's fall came swiftest. His corporate connections, built on the promise of future control over Eleanor's Essentials, crumbled overnight. 3 boards he sat on requested his immediate resignation. His business phone, once buzzing constantly with opportunities, fell silent except for cancellation notices. I watched from my office as he cleared his desk, his designer suit no longer carrying the same swagger. The security guard's presence seemed unnecessary. His shoulders slumped in defeat as he carried his personal belongings in a cardboard box. Ashley's social media empire imploded spectacularly. Her followers, once eager to consume her carefully curated family redemption story, turned viciously against her. Brand deals vanished. Comment sections filled with scorn. Her attempt to post an explanation video backfired as viewers dissected every forced tear, every practiced gesture. #FakeFamily and #AshleySnake trended for days. The authenticity she'd faked for years became her undoing. No one trusts an influencer exposed as a fraud. Emily's punishment came differently. No dramatic firing or social media fallout. Just the quiet ostracism of former colleagues who'd witnessed her silent complicity. The product development team she'd worked with now avoided eye contact in hallways. Her desk items were packed and mailed to her address. No confrontation, just absence. Sometimes silence hurts more than noise. Their personal lives unraveled with equal speed. Robert's fiancée, daughter of a prominent business family, quietly returned her ring. Society invitations for Ashley dried up. No one wanted their event tagged with her now toxic brand. Emily's teaching position at the local college faced review after concerned parents complained about her ethics. Victoria brought me daily reports of their downfall, though I hadn't asked for them. Robert's startup investors have pulled out, she noted one morning. Ashley's been dropped by her talent agency. Emily. She hesitated. Emily's been sitting in her car outside the building each morning, but never comes in. I didn't respond to their desperate attempts at contact. Robert's lengthy emails explaining his strategic business decisions went unread. Ashley's tearful voicemails, claiming she'd been influenced by bad advice, remained unheard. Emily's simple text, "I'm sorry," sat unanswered. The retirement home brochure they'd once pushed at me found a new purpose, pinned to my office bulletin board. A reminder not of their betrayal but of my strength. Their financial reality hit hard. Robert's lavish apartment went on the market. Ashley's designer wardrobe appeared on consignment sites. Emily downsized to a studio apartment. The comfortable lifestyle they'd taken for granted, built on the assumption of inheriting my success, vanished like morning mist. 1 month after the shareholders' meeting, I received an unexpected visit from my former neighbor Sarah, who'd given me my first market stall opportunity. "I saw Robert at the grocery store," she mentioned, settling into a chair in my office. "Using coupons, wearing last season's suit. He looked different." Different how? Like someone who's finally understanding the cost of his choices. I nodded, turning to watch the sunset through my office windows. The same sun that had once risen over my kitchen as I made my first batch of soap now set on the empire that soap had built, and on the children who'd tried to steal it. "The thing about greed," I told Sarah, touching the bracelet I'd reclaimed from Ashley's graduation day, "is that it eventually consumes everything, including the greedy." The price of their betrayal wasn't just financial or social. It was the permanent loss of something they'd never valued until it was gone, a mother's love and trust. 3 months after my children's downfall, I stood in front of Eleanor's Essentials headquarters, addressing a different kind of crowd. No shareholders this time. Instead, a group of women over 50, each bearing the quiet determination I recognized from my own kitchen days. "The Eleanor's Second Chapter Foundation," I announced, "isn't just about money. It's about belief in ourselves when others have written us off." The foundation's first initiative launched with $5 million in seed funding. Its mission: providing business grants to women over 50 who'd been displaced, discouraged, or dismissed by their families or society. Each grant came with mentorship, business training, and a message: it's never too late to rewrite your story. Victoria helped select the first round of recipients. Margaret, 63, crafting artisanal cheese in her basement after her children sold the family farm. Patricia, 58, developing eco-friendly cleaning products while battling her ex-husband's attempts to claim her patents. Helen, 67, turning her grandmother's preserved flower techniques into modern art after her family suggested retiring quietly. The grant ceremony took place in my old kitchen, now preserved exactly as it had been the day my children abandoned me. The herb drying racks still hung by the window, the soap molds lined the counters, and my grandmother's recipe book held pride of place. This kitchen, I told the gathered women, was both an ending and a beginning. Here I learned that sometimes losing everything means making room for something better. Each recipient shared their story. Margaret's hands, weathered from years of farming, trembled as she described her children's betrayal. Patricia's voice cracked when she mentioned her ex-husband's mockery. Helen's eyes glistened as she recalled her family's dismissal. But there was steel beneath their tears. We converted the company's East Wing into a business incubator. The space that Robert had once planned to turn into executive suites now housed workshop areas, testing laboratories and collaboration spaces. Where Ashley had planned her influencer studio, women now learned marketing strategies and business planning. The foundation's impact spread rapidly. Local media covered our grant recipients' successes. Other companies began reaching out, offering partnerships and support. A movement was building, one that recognized the untapped potential in women's society had tried to sideline. Emily's old product development lab became our innovation center. The irony wasn't lost on me. The space where my youngest had silently watched her siblings plot now echoed with the confident voices of women claiming their second chances. One evening, as I reviewed new grant applications, Victoria brought me a special file. "You should see this," she said quietly. Inside was an application from Linda, 65, Robert's former mother-in-law. After her daughter broke off the engagement, she'd lost her family's support for her small catering business. Her application letter was honest, vulnerable, and determined. I approved her grant personally. The Foundation's quarterly newsletter featured success stories that felt like mirror images of my own journey. Women turning craft hobbies into thriving businesses. Mothers and grandmothers reclaiming their power after family betrayals. Each story a testament to resilience, each success a beacon for others. "You've created more than a foundation," Victoria observed one day, watching the incubator space buzz with activity. "You've created a family. One built on support instead of obligation." I touched my grandmother's recipe book, its pages now digitized and shared with every grant recipient as a symbol of inherited wisdom and strength. "Sometimes," I replied, "the family you choose creates a better legacy than the family you're born into." My children had sought to inherit my wealth. Instead, I'd found a way to transform their betrayal into a gift for others, proving that the darkest endings can birth the brightest beginnings. The media storm hit with unprecedented force. What began as a business scandal transformed into a cultural moment, a stark reminder of society's disposable view of aging parents. My story, initially confined to financial news, exploded across mainstream platforms. Robert's spectacular fall became a cautionary tale in business schools. Harvard Business Review published a case study titled "Blood Isn't Business: The Eleanor's Essentials Betrayal." His former colleagues dissected his downfall in industry panels, his name becoming synonymous with familial corporate treachery. A viral video surfaced of him arguing with a barista over a declined credit card. The internet's reaction was swift and merciless. From corporate heir to can't afford coffee, his carefully cultivated LinkedIn profile disappeared overnight. Ashley's influence empire crumbled spectacularly in real time. Her followers, once devoted to her carefully curated authenticity, turned into digital archaeologists, unearthing and exposing years of manipulations. Every past post was scrutinized, every old story re-examined through the lens of her exposed duplicity. Her infamous Family First podcast series, where she tearfully chronicled our reconciliation, became subject to ruthless parodies. Comedy shows created skits about influencers faking family relationships. She became the punchline she'd always feared being. Emily's quieter downfall proved equally devastating. Her teaching positions review ended in resignation. Her students' parents had Googled her name, finding endless articles about her complicity. The silence she'd chosen became her defining characteristic. Local mothers whispered about the daughter who watched her mother being betrayed and said nothing. Their social circles contracted with brutal efficiency. Invitations dried up. Former friends crossed streets to avoid encounters. Country club memberships were quietly lost in renewal. The elite society that had once embraced them now treated them like cautionary tales. Robert's ex-fiancé gave a scathing interview to a business magazine. He showed me who he really was by how he treated his mother. I believed him when he said she was difficult. Now I realize the only difficult thing was his relationship with truth. Ashley's influencer colleagues scrambled to distance themselves. Her previous collaborators released public statements denouncing her actions. #NoToxicFamily trended whenever she attempted to post explanations. Her follower count plummeted from millions to mere thousands. Emily's silence finally broke during an unplanned encounter at a grocery store. A former student's mother confronted her, filming the interaction. "How do you teach ethics when you couldn't even stand up for your own mother?" The video went viral, adding another layer to their public shame. Local newspapers ran features on elderly parents sharing similar stories of ungrateful children. My story had unleashed a flood of hidden family dramas, each revelation further cementing my children's status as symbols of filial betrayal. Their attempts at damage control backfired spectacularly. Robert's LinkedIn post about learning from mistakes attracted thousands of scathing comments. Ashley's YouTube apology video earned more dislikes than views. Emily's letter to the college board begging for reinstatement was leaked. Her pleas for understanding met with collective indifference. Victoria brought me their latest press clippings one morning. "They're being called the Thankless Three now," she noted, placing the articles on my desk. "Every parent's nightmare children." I glanced at the headlines. From privilege to pariahs. The Eleanor's Essentials heirs fall from grace. Viral villains. How 3 siblings became social media's most hated family. The price of ingratitude. A mother's triumph over betrayal. "Their father called," Victoria added quietly. "He saw the news. Wants to reconnect after all these years." I placed the articles in a folder marked Legacy. Not for the money or success, but as testament to a truth my children had forgotten. Reputation once shattered, leaves wounds that even time struggles to heal. "Your ex-husband is waiting in the lobby," Victoria announced, placing my morning tea on my desk. "He says he's ready to be a father again." I gazed at the city skyline through my office window, watching the sunrise paint the buildings in shades of amber. The same color as my first batch of honey lavender soap. "Tell him," I replied, "that parenthood isn't a role you can abandon and reclaim at convenience." 1 year had passed since the shareholder meeting that changed everything. My children's betrayal, once a raw wound, had scarred over into something stronger. Their father's sudden reappearance felt like a footnote in a story that had already reached its conclusion. That evening I walked through my original kitchen, now a museum of sorts within the Eleanor's Essentials headquarters. The herb drying racks still hung by the window, though they no longer held ingredients for soap. Instead they displayed photographs, not of my children, but of the women whose lives the foundation had transformed. Margaret's artisanal cheese shop had just opened its 3rd location. Patricia's eco-friendly cleaning products were heading to national distribution. Helen's preserved flower art was featured in galleries across the country. Their success stories lined the walls where family photos once hung, creating a new kind of family album. I picked up my grandmother's recipe book, its pages worn with wisdom and use. "You were right, Grandma," I whispered. "Our greatest strength often comes from our deepest wounds." The media still called occasionally, seeking updates on the Thankless Three. Robert had moved to a small town, taking a middle management position far from his corporate aspirations. Ashley worked at a local boutique, her social media empire reduced to private accounts with handful of followers. Emily had found work at a community college 2 states away, teaching night classes under her married name. Their latest attempts at contact sat unopened in Victoria's desk drawer. Birthday cards, Christmas greetings, requests for reconciliation, all bearing return addresses that spoke of downsized lives and diminished dreams. But I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, no joy in their struggles. Instead I felt something more powerful. Indifference. The retirement home brochure they'd once thrust at me had been framed, hanging in my office as a reminder not of their cruelty, but of my resilience. Beneath it sat a stack of applications for the Foundation's next grant cycle, each one representing another woman ready to rise from her own ashes. "The board meeting's ready," Victoria reminded me gently. "They're waiting to hear about the international expansion." Walking into the boardroom I passed the wall of press clippings chronicling our journey. The headlines had evolved from "Family Betrayal Rocks Beauty Empire" to "Eleanor's Essentials, Redefining Success and Second Chances." Our story had transformed from scandal to inspiration. As I took my place at the head of the table, I touched the space where Ashley's graduation bracelet once sat on my wrist. In its place was a simple silver bangle, a gift from the Foundation's first class of grant recipients, inscribed with words that had become our motto. "It's never too late for truth." The truth had set me free in ways my children never anticipated. Free from the obligation of forced family ties. Free from the weight of their expectations. Free from the need for their approval or love. In trying to break me, they had instead broken the chains that bound me to their toxicity. "Let's begin," I addressed the board, opening my folder to reveal plans for our global initiative. The future stretched before me, bright with possibilities that had nothing to do with DNA and everything to do with choice. I had chosen to transform betrayal into blessing, pain into purpose, endings into beginnings. In the end, the greatest truth was this: sometimes family isn't about the blood in your veins, but the love in your choices. And I had chosen to create a legacy that would outlive any betrayal. While I was volunteering abroad, my stepfather called, saying, "I've sold your mountain cabin to cover my financial mistakes. It's for the greater good." "Mine?" He smirked. I calmly replied, "Hope it works out." He didn't understand my behavior at the moment of the call. When I returned, I revealed the cabin wasn't just property. It was my mother's dream, the one thing she built with her own hands, away from the chaos, away from him. And now he had the audacity to sell it. To strip away the last piece of her legacy for his selfish greed. "Hope it works out," I said, my voice steady. He thought I was powerless. He thought I would break. But what he didn't know was that the cabin was never his to sell. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you for being here and sharing in this journey of resilience and justice. If you love stories where determination wins over deception, consider subscribing. It's free and helps us grow this incredible community. Now let's dive into the story. I kept the phone pressed against my ear for a few seconds after he hung up, listening to the dead silence on the other end. Not because I was in shock. No, I had prepared for this moment long ago. I let the stillness settle in, absorbing the weight of what had just happened. He thought he had taken something from me. He thought he had won. I slid the phone onto the wooden counter and turned back to the dimly lit room. The volunteer center was quiet now, the last of the team having gone to rest. The scent of rain clung to the air, a reminder of the storm that had passed through earlier. I walked over to the window, staring at my reflection in the glass. My face was unreadable, my expression calm. But beneath the surface, something sharper burned. A quiet, simmering certainty. I had always known this day would come. My stepfather had a pattern. An ability to convince himself that everything good in life was meant to be his, regardless of who actually built it. He had done it with my mother, leeching off her success, pretending to be the man of the house while she worked tirelessly to build a future for us. When she passed, he saw it as a chance to finally claim everything as his own. But the cabin had remained out of his reach. Till now. He thought I would rage, scream, demand answers. That's how he operated, through chaos, through emotional manipulation. But I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, I exhaled slowly, reaching for my suitcase. It was time to go home. The airport was crowded, the usual chaos of hurried travelers and overhead announcements blending into a dull hum. I kept my movements efficient. Boarding pass, security, gate. Everything in order, everything moving forward. As the plane lifted off the ground, I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. My mind drifted to the last time I had seen the cabin. The crisp mountain air, the scent of pine, the way the wooden floors creaked beneath my feet like they were alive with memory. My mother had spent years shaping that place, every inch of it a testament to her resilience. And now he thought it was gone. I opened my eyes, staring out at the dark clouds stretching across the horizon. By the time I landed, he would know just how wrong he was. The drive up the mountain was longer than I remembered. The road twisted through dense forests, the mist rolling in like an old friend. I kept the windows down, letting the cold air bite at my skin, keeping me focused. I had called ahead, confirming the details with the town's records office. The name on the deed hadn't changed. The sale had gone through, yes, but not in the way my stepfather believed. I reached the final turn and there it was. The cabin stood at the top of the ridge, untouched by time. A fresh coat of paint on the shutters, New fencing around the perimeter. Whoever had bought it was trying to make it their own. A truck was parked nearby, workers moving in and out with materials. I pulled in slowly, stepping out and taking it all in. Everything about this place felt the same. But I wasn't the same person who had left. I started toward the house, my boots crunching against the gravel. The front door was open, and as I stepped inside, I was hit with the familiar scent of wood and earth. I could hear voices from the back of the house, the sound of tools at work. A man in his 40s wearing a tool belt emerged from the hallway, wiping his hands on a rag. He barely glanced up as he spoke. "Hey, can I help?" Then he saw me. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "No, I think I'm exactly where I need to be." His brow furrowed. "This is private property. Is it?" I tilted my head, stepping past him and into what used to be the main sitting room. My mother's favorite chair had been removed, but the fireplace was still the same. The floors, the walls, they all remembered. I turned back to him. "Who owns this place?" The man straightened. "Not sure what you're getting at, but the new owner just bought it." "I work for him." I let the words hang in the air before I said, "That's interesting." His confusion deepened. "And why's that?" "Because according to the county records," I said, pulling a folded document from my pocket, "the deed to this property still belongs to someone else. And that someone isn't your boss." He frowned, taking a step forward. "That's not possible. The sale went through." I held up a hand. "Oh, a sale happened, all right. But my stepfather never had the right to sell it." I let the words sink in. He just didn't know that. The weight of my statement settled in the room. I glanced around one last time, then stepped back toward the door. "You might want to call your boss," I said over my shoulder. "Tell him he's got a problem." And with that, I walked out, leaving only the sound of my footsteps against the wooden floors. The same ones my mother once walked, the ones that still belonged to me. I stepped onto the porch, breathing in the cold mountain air. This wasn't over. Not yet. I stepped onto the porch, breathing in the crisp mountain air, feeling the weight of the past pressing against my chest. The wood beneath my feet creaked slightly, just as it always had, a familiar whisper of home. But this wasn't home anymore. Not yet. The man inside the cabin was still standing there, gripping his tool belt like it held all the answers he needed. His confusion was understandable. After all, he had no idea he was working on a project that legally wasn't supposed to exist. I descended the porch steps, walking toward my car with measured steps. The key was already in my hand, but I didn't open the door just yet. Instead, I turned back, letting my gaze sweep over the property one more time. Every detail was etched into my memory. The way the roof sloped slightly to the left, the way the front windows framed the sunset perfectly in the evening. My mother had spent years perfecting every detail of this place, making it a sanctuary. A place untouched by the chaos of the outside world. And now, someone had painted over her dreams like they were nothing. I could feel the man's eyes still on me from the doorway, hesitant, unsure whether he should call someone. I gave him a small, unreadable smile before finally getting into my car. I wasn't here to start a fight. Not yet. The town looked the same, but I had changed. As I drove through the winding streets, I took note of what remained and what had shifted in my absence. The old diner was still standing, its neon sign flickering in protest against the years. A few of the small shops had changed owners, but the bones of the place remained the same, familiar yet slightly altered, like a dream remembered differently upon waking. I parked in front of the records office, cutting the engine and stepping out into the cool afternoon. The bell above the door jingled as I pushed it open, and the scent of old paper and ink greeted me instantly. A woman behind the counter glanced up, recognition flickering across her features before she smiled. "Well, I'll be," she said, setting down her pen. "Didn't think I'd see you back around here." "Didn't think I'd have a reason to come back," I admitted, walking toward the counter. "But here we are." She eyed me carefully, her smile fading slightly. "This about the cabin?" I nodded. She exhaled, shaking her head. "Knew something was off about that sale. When I saw the paperwork come through, I thought you'd be the one signing it." I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I had brought with me. "I need the most recent copy of the deed on file." She hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Give me a minute." I watched as she disappeared into the back room, leaving me alone with the quiet hum of the office. The walls were lined with shelves of documents, each one a small piece of someone's history, someone's fight. This was my fight now. When she returned, she slid a file across the counter. I flipped it open, scanning the familiar signatures. My mother's. And then further down, my friend's, the one I had entrusted with the transfer before I left. Everything was exactly as it should be. But the stepfather's name was nowhere on it. I knew he couldn't sell it, I murmured, more to myself than to her. She nodded. Legally, no. But that didn't stop the sale from going through. Seems the buyer didn't do their due diligence. Guess they figured no one would challenge it. My jaw tightened. They figured wrong. I drove past my stepfather's house next. Not because I planned to confront him. Not yet. But because I wanted to see how he was living, how comfortable he had made himself after what he had done. His car was in the driveway. A newer model than the last time I had seen him. He had wasted no time in spending the money, in pretending like his victory was set in stone. I slowed as I passed, watching the house for any sign of movement. And then through the front window I saw him. He was leaning back in an armchair, a drink in one hand, looking as relaxed as I had ever seen him. For a moment, a flicker of something sharp twisted inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just the certainty that he had no idea what was coming. I didn't stop. I kept driving. By the time I reached the outskirts of town, the sun was dipping low behind the trees, casting long shadows across the road. I pulled over at the lookout point just before the mountain road curved toward the cabin. The view was the same as I remembered. Rolling hills stretching into the horizon, the town nestled below like a forgotten secret. I stepped out of the car, breathing in deeply. The air here was different. Cleaner. Untouched. The town could change. My stepfather could scheme. But this place would always be the same. And now it was time to take back what was mine. I pulled out my phone, dialing a number I had been holding onto for months. When my friend picked up, their voice was steady. "You're back." "I'm back," I confirmed. "And it's time." "Pause." "Then you sure?" I looked out over the horizon, the wind tugging at my jacket. "He sold something that was never his," I said. "And I'm going to make sure he pays for it." My grip tightened on the phone. "We start tomorrow." I hung up the call, the plan now set in motion. The cool wind swept through the overlook, rustling the dry leaves scattered across the pavement. My fingers tightened around the phone before I slid it back into my pocket. This wasn't just about reclaiming a piece of property. It was about justice. About ensuring my stepfather understood, truly understood, that he had never been in control. The morning came swiftly, bringing with it a crisp mountain breeze and the weight of inevitable consequences. I arrived at the town's legal office just as they were opening. My friend was already inside, waiting, the thick folder resting on the desk between us. "Everything is in order," they said, tapping the paperwork. "The sale was fraudulent. You hold the legal deed. They'll have no choice but to acknowledge it." I nodded, scanning the neatly typed documents. It was all there, irrefutable, binding. My stepfather hadn't just made a mistake. He had built his castle on air, and today the walls would collapse. "Let's make this official," I said, my voice steady. The town hall was busier than usual. The locals had a way of sensing when something was about to unfold, and word had already spread that something about the cabin's sale was amiss. A few curious eyes trailed me as I stepped inside, but I ignored them. This wasn't for spectacle. This was for closure. At the front of the room, the county recorder's office held its weekly public meeting. Mostly routine approvals, zoning requests, and the occasional property dispute. I took my seat near the front, placing my folder on the table before me. Then right on cue my stepfather entered. He strolled in like he belonged, shoulders squared, exuding false confidence. He hadn't noticed me yet, too caught up in shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries with familiar faces. To them, he was just another man who had made a good deal, securing his financial future. But today that illusion would shatter. The buyer arrived next. A man in his late 50s, dressed in a crisp blazer, with the air of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. His expression was one of impatience, as though today's proceedings were merely a formality before he could move forward with his renovations. He was about to realize otherwise. The meeting proceeded with its usual mundane formalities. I waited, letting the anticipation build. Then when the moderator called for new business, I rose to my feet. "I have a matter regarding a fraudulent property sale," I announced, my voice carrying through the hall. Heads turned. My stepfather's smirk faltered as his gaze finally locked onto mine. For the first time I saw something flicker across his face. Uncertainty. Please state your claim, the moderator said, adjusting his glasses. I took my time. I wanted every word to land with precision. The property in question is a cabin located at the edge of town, recently sold by a man who never had the legal right to do so. I turned slightly, letting my gaze settle on my stepfather. This sale was conducted without proper authorization, and the deed remains legally in my name. A murmur spread through the room. The buyer's face darkened as he shifted in his seat. My stepfather let out a forced chuckle, leaning back. Now hold on a second. I lifted the folder and placed it on the table with a decisive thud. Here is the original deed, recorded and signed before I left town. My stepfather was never the legal owner. The sale he conducted was fraudulent, and therefore the transaction is invalid. The moderator took the folder, flipping through the documents. A few tense moments passed as he read, his expression growing increasingly serious. Then finally he closed the folder. This paperwork is legitimate. He turned to the buyer. I'm afraid you've been misled. The buyer's chair scraped against the floor as he pushed back abruptly. You mean to tell me I purchased a property that was never his to sell? His voice was dangerously low, his temper barely contained. My stepfather shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. Now look, this is just a misunderstanding. I was under the impression that... No, I cut him off, my voice sharp. You knew exactly what you were doing. You counted on me being too far away to stop you. His face reddened. I was trying to. You were trying to take something that was never yours, I said evenly. But the law doesn't work that way. Not anymore. The buyer turned to the moderator. I want my money back. Every cent. The moderator nodded. This matter will need to be handled legally, but given the evidence presented, the responsibility to return the funds will likely fall on the seller. All eyes landed on my stepfather. The weight of reality finally sank in. His bravado cracked, replaced by something rawer. Panic. I don't have that kind of money, he muttered. The buyer's expression darkened. Then I suggest you find a way. Silence stretched through the room. My stepfather swallowed hard, his gaze darting to me, searching for some kind of escape. There wasn't one. I leaned forward slightly. Hope it works out. The exact words he had thrown at me over the phone. The moment I said them, his face twisted, realization hitting him like a blow. He had walked straight into this, thinking he was untouchable. Thinking I wouldn't fight back. But now he had nowhere to run. I walked out of the town hall, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. The crisp mountain air filled my lungs, clearer than it had been in years. My stepfather's fate was sealed. Whether through legal action or financial ruin, he would feel the consequences of his own greed. The buyer stormed past me, already on his phone, no doubt making calls to his legal team. I didn't pity him. He had been careless, failing to verify what he was purchasing. But my real focus had never been him. It had been the man who thought he could rewrite history. And now history was correcting itself. I made my way back toward my car, taking in the familiar sights, the roads I had once driven as a child, the mountains standing tall as silent witnesses to everything. The fight wasn't over just yet. Loose ends needed tying. But this was the first checkmate. And I had no intention of stopping now. I stepped out of the town hall, the air crisp with the scent of pine and the remnants of autumn. My stepfather was still inside, no doubt scrambling for some excuse, some desperate attempt to talk his way out of the mess he had created. But there was no way out. The walls he had built around his deception had crumbled, and now the weight of reality would bury him. I walked to my car, but before I could reach the door, I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Wait. I turned to see the buyer approaching, his face a mixture of frustration and controlled fury. He had a phone clutched tightly in his hand, his fingers white from the pressure. You knew, didn't you? He accused, his voice low but sharp. I met his gaze evenly. I knew he'd try something eventually. But I didn't know he'd be reckless enough to attempt this. The man exhaled sharply, dragging a hand down his face. I don't take losses lightly. I'm sure you don't, I said coolly. His eyes flickered with something unreadable before he nodded. Then I hope you understand that I'll make sure he pays for every cent. That makes two of us. Without another word, he turned and walked toward his car, already dialing another number. I watched him leave, knowing my stepfather's problems were only beginning. Back inside the town hall, My stepfather sat hunched in one of the wooden chairs, his face pale, his hands gripping the arms of the seat like they were the only things keeping him upright. His usual bravado was gone, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar: fear. The moderator had left, and the clerk behind the counter was finishing up paperwork. He barely looked up as my stepfather leaned forward, trying to steady his voice. This can't be real," he muttered. "There has to be a way to fix this." The clerk sighed, clearly unimpressed with his sudden change in demeanor. "The only way to fix it is to return the money which you no longer have." The words hit him like a blow. He slumped back, fingers raking through his graying hair. The buyer had been generous to give him time, perhaps too generous. But the legal process was clear. A fraudulent sale meant legal repercussions, and financial restitution would be the first demand. The second would be far worse. My stepfather pushed himself up from the chair, his movements sluggish, like the weight of his mistakes had finally settled into his bones. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and I knew without seeing the screen who it was. His creditors. His mistakes. His past. And now they were all catching up to him. The next few weeks unraveled him. The first blow came from the legal claim filed by the buyer, an immediate demand for repayment of the funds used in the fraudulent purchase. The buyer wasn't the kind of man to accept failure. He was ruthless, moving quickly through legal channels, ensuring that my stepfather had no escape. The second blow came when the town caught wind of the scandal. The locals had never fully trusted my stepfather. He had always been an outsider in their eyes, the man who had attached himself to my mother and her success. Now, with his deception fully exposed, the quiet judgment turned into open avoidance. Doors that once welcomed him now closed. Favors that had once been extended were revoked. His social currency depleted faster than his actual finances. And then the final blow landed. The banks. The money he had recklessly spent after the sale. The car, the debts he thought he had covered. None of it mattered now. With the fraudulent transaction nullified, his accounts were frozen. He had borrowed against money that no longer legally existed. And the bank wanted their share. The calls became relentless. Notices arrived in stacks, each one a reminder of how little control he had left. And then, finally, his house, the last thing he had, was put on notice for repossession. I knew it before he did. I had seen the foreclosure notice at the county office when I had gone to confirm the final legal steps regarding the cabin. I had held the paper in my hands, reading the words slowly, deliberately. It was done. He had nothing left. The day he realized it, he came to me. I was at the cabin, standing on the porch, watching the sun set over the ridge. The light cast long shadows over the trees, the kind that stretched toward the horizon but never quite reached it. I heard the sound of a car struggling up the gravel path. I didn't turn. Footsteps. Slow, uncertain. Then silence. And then his voice, hoarse, strained. "I need help." I finally turned to face him. He looked smaller. The weight of his choices had hollowed him out, leaving only the remnants of the man who had once strutted through life as if the world owed him something. He swallowed hard. "I don't have anywhere else to go." I leaned against the railing, arms crossed. "You made your choices." His face tightened. "I made mistakes. I didn't speak." His gaze flickered to the cabin, the one thing he had tried to take from me. His voice cracked. "I just need time to fix things." A humorless smile tugged at the corner of my lips. "Time won't fix this." His jaw clenched, desperation flashing across his face. "I'm still your family." I pushed off the railing, stepping closer, meeting his eyes with unshaken resolve. "You stopped being my family the moment you tried to steal what wasn't yours." His breath hitched. I didn't know what else to do." You could have chosen honesty. Integrity. You could have chosen to be better." Silence stretched between us. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying away whatever was left of his dignity. His shoulders slumped. For the first time he truly looked like a man who had lost everything. And then the final nail. I tilted my head slightly, my voice calm. "Hope it works out." The same words he had said to me when he thought he had won. He flinched as if struck. He knew this was the end. Without another word, I turned and walked back into the cabin, shutting the door behind me. I didn't look back. He had built his downfall with his own hands. And now he had to live in it. I stood inside the cabin, my back against the door, listening. Outside, the wind carried the sound of gravel shifting beneath hesitant steps. He was still there. Waiting. A minute passed. Then another. A breath. Said. The sound of someone realizing they had nowhere left to go. I turned, peering through the curtain. He hadn't moved. His shoulders were hunched, hands buried deep in his pockets, his once proud frame now sagging under the weight of his own downfall. I should have felt something. Pity maybe. Some lingering trace of warmth for the man who had at one point been tied to my life. But there was nothing. Just a hollow sense of inevitability. This was the moment he had set in motion the day he picked up the phone and smugly declared that my mother's cabin was his to sell. I had let him believe it then. Let him think he had won. And now, standing before the door he no longer had the right to enter, he knew better. Still he didn't leave. I sighed, pressing my palms against the smooth wood of the kitchen counter. He wasn't going to go quietly. That wasn't in his nature. And so, with the same measured calm I had held through every step of this, I walked to the door and pulled it open. The cold mountain air rushed in, biting at my skin. He flinched slightly but lifted his gaze to meet mine. His eyes, once full of arrogance, now brimmed with something else entirely. Desperation. His voice cracked, hoarse from a lifetime of never having to beg. He tried again. I just need a little time. I said nothing, waiting. He took it as permission to continue, stepping closer, his shoes crunching against the gravel. I lost everything. He gestured vaguely toward the town below, as if expecting me to acknowledge the obvious. The house, the accounts, everything's frozen. They're taking the car next. His breath hitched, but he forced a weak chuckle, as if trying to downplay the collapse of his carefully constructed illusions. Funny how fast things change, huh? I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. He swallowed hard. Look, I know I messed up. But you... He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You have the cabin. You have everything you wanted. That was the angle he was playing. The appeal to fairness. As if this was some even trade. As if I had taken something from him in return. I tilted my head slightly. Everything I wanted? His jaw tightened. You know what I mean. I did. I just wanted to hear him say it. I just need a place to figure things out, he continued, shifting on his feet. Just until I can get back on my feet. There was the final plea. The moment where he tried to make me the villain if I refused. I let the silence stretch between us, the wind filling the gaps where words should have been. His shoulders tensed, waiting, hoping. Then finally I spoke. You stood in this exact spot, I said quietly, believing you had won. He opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. You called me from the comfort of a house you can't afford anymore, bragging about how you'd sold this cabin to fix your financial mistakes. I leaned forward slightly, my voice razor sharp. You didn't care what it meant to me. You never have. He blinked rapidly, the weight of my words settling in his chest. You wanted me powerless. My voice didn't waver. You wanted me to beg, to fight, to lose control. I exhaled, shaking my head. But I didn't. And now you're the one standing here with nothing. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. I straightened, my eyes locking onto his. Hope it works out. His entire body went rigid. The words landed like a slap, their familiarity twisting something deep inside him. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. He knew that was the end. I held his gaze for a moment longer, then stepped back into the cabin and shut the door. This time I didn't listen for his footsteps. I didn't need to. I already knew. I had won. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing the past outside. I exhaled slowly, pressing my back against the wood, my palms resting flat against the grain. The silence inside the cabin wasn't empty. It was full. Full of history, of memory, of the weight my mother had carried for years before she passed. And now, for the first time in a long time, it was mine again. Truly mine. I walked forward, my fingers trailing over the rough-hewn walls, feeling the grooves in the wood, the knots where my mother's hands had once worked. She had built this place for herself, for us. Not for him. Never for him. The fireplace still smelled of old embers, though no fire had been lit in months. The chairs had been rearranged, a few new additions left behind by the would-be buyer, but the bones of the place remained the same. This cabin had endured, waiting for me to come home. I moved through the space with quiet reverence, touching everything, reconnecting. The wooden table where we had shared meals. The window ledge where she used to rest her coffee cup as she watched the sunrise. The old bookshelf, its corners worn from years of use. It was all still here. Still standing. I walked to the back door, pushing it open. The wind rushed in, crisp and biting, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Stepping onto the porch, I let my gaze sweep over the land, the view stretching endlessly beyond the treetops. The mountain stood as it always had, unchanged by time or greed. It didn't care about the battles waged over this cabin. It had been here long before us, and it would remain long after. I breathed in deeply, letting the cold fill my lungs. It was over. The days that followed felt lighter, as if a weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. I spent the first morning clearing out what didn't belong, removing the traces of someone else's attempt to claim this place. The furniture the buyer had brought in was the first to go. I didn't need reminders of what could have been. By the afternoon, the cabin looked as it should. Simple, sturdy, a reflection of my mother's quiet strength. I sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, watching the sky bleed into hues of orange and violet. The air had turned colder, the promise of winter settling in, but for the first time in a long time I felt warm. A knock on the porch railing made me glance up. My friends stood there, hands in their jacket pockets, a knowing look in their eyes. "Looks different already," they said. I smiled. "Feels different too." They stepped forward, leaning against the post beside me. "It's yours again." I nodded, the truth of that statement settling deep in my chest. It always was. Pause. Then, what happens now? I considered that for a moment. The fight was over. The damage was done. My stepfather had lost everything and there was no coming back from it. The town had turned its back on him, and the last I had heard, he was leaving, disappearing into whatever shadows remained. But that wasn't my concern anymore. Now it was about moving forward. "I think," I said finally, "I stay." The words tasted right. My friend nodded as if they had expected that answer all along. "Good. This place needs you." I smiled, looking back out at the trees. And for the first time in years I felt at peace. The seasons passed and the cabin remained. Winter came, wrapping the mountain in thick layers of snow. I spent those months tending to the fire, repairing what time had worn down, making the space truly mine. The solitude was a welcome change. The mountain didn't demand anything from me. It just existed, steady and unwavering, just as it always had. Spring followed, melting away the cold, bringing new life to the land. I walked the familiar trails, breathed in the fresh air, and let the past fade into the background. By summer, the cabin felt fully alive again. Friends visited, laughter echoing through the rooms where silence had once settled too deeply. The land thrived, untouched by greed, unspoiled by the hands that had once tried to claim it. And through it all, the mountain watched, standing tall, taken, just like me. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the ridge, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee in hand, the warmth seeping into my fingers. I thought about everything that had led me here. The betrayal, the fight, the long journey back. It had been worth it. Because now, as the wind rustled through the trees and the last light of day faded into the horizon, I knew one thing with certainty. This was home. And it always would be. My husband reported me missing, and cried on the news, begging for me to return. But when I showed up at the police station alive, his reaction told me everything I needed to know. I stepped through the heavy glass doors of the police station, my fingers trembling as I gripped the handle. The moment felt surreal, like I was walking into a life that no longer belonged to me. My body ached, my clothes clung to my skin with the weight of dried sweat and exhaustion, but none of that compared to the storm raging inside my chest. The receptionist barely looked up from her computer screen. "Can I help you?" My voice came out cracked, barely above a whisper. "I think I was reported missing." That got her attention. Her fingers paused over the keyboard, her eyes flickering up to my face. A moment of silence stretched between us before she carefully asked, "Your name?" I swallowed hard. My throat burned. "Sarah Lawson." Her face changed instantly. The hesitation, the widening of her eyes, she knew. The name meant something to her. 1 second. That's all it took before the room around me erupted into chaos. Officers appeared from every direction, voices overlapping, radios crackling. Someone muttered something about a detective. A young officer with a notepad kept staring at me like I was a ghost. And then I heard it. A television screen mounted on the far wall played the local news. The volume was low, but the captions told me everything I needed to know. Heartbroken husband's desperate plea, "Please, Sarah, if you're out there, come home." I turned just in time to see the footage. My husband, Ethan, sat at a press conference table, eyes swollen, face buried in his hands. A microphone was shoved in front of him. He lifted his head slowly, blinking away fake tears, his voice shaking as he spoke. "She was my world," he choked out, barely able to get the words past his lips. "I don't know how to live without her. If anyone has seen my wife, please help bring her back to me." The cameras zoomed in, capturing the depth of his pain. His hands trembled. His breath hitched. He was every bit the devastated husband, a man clinging to hope. I felt sick. Every single word was a lie. An officer gently guided me toward a chair. "We've been looking for you for weeks," he said. "Are you hurt? Do you remember what happened?" I barely heard him. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. Ethan, my husband, the man who had supposedly spent every waking moment searching for me. Right now he was sitting in front of a room full of reporters, weeping for the cameras, pleading for my return. And in the very next breath he was cracking a joke with the officer beside him. Something dark curled in my stomach. His face had shifted so fast. The raw pain vanished in a blink, his lips twitching up in an easy grin. It was subtle, barely noticeable to anyone who wasn't watching him closely. But I saw it, because I knew him. I had been married to him for nearly 6 years. I had memorized every expression, every tick, every quirk of his face. And that wasn't grief. That was relief. The kind of relief you feel when a problem has disappeared. The kind of relief that says it worked. My blood turned to ice. Before I could say a word, the station doors swung open and suddenly there he was. Ethan. He was breathing hard, his navy blue shirt slightly wrinkled, like he had rushed here in a panic. His wide blue-gray eyes found me instantly, his jaw falling slack. The room went still. The officers around us seemed to hold their breath, waiting for a dramatic reunion. A weeping husband and his lost wife, finally back together. But that's not what happened. Ethan didn't run to me. He didn't even take a step forward. He just stood there, frozen. I stared back at him, my pulse hammering in my ears. My entire body begged me to speak, to say something, anything. But the words caught in my throat. And then I saw it. The moment his expression changed. It was quick. A flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. A second of absolute panic before he forced his face into something softer. "Sarah." His voice cracked. "Oh my God." He moved forward then, slow and hesitant, like he was stepping toward a stranger. I braced myself for the hug. For the performance he was about to put on in front of all these people. Sure enough, his arms wrapped around me, squeezing too tightly, too desperately. His breath was warm against my ear, but his words chilled me to the bone. "Why did you come back?" I stiffened. He pulled away before I could react, his hands shaking as he cupped my face. "I thought I lost you," he whispered, loud enough for the officers to hear. His thumb brushed my cheek, his eyes glistening with false tears. But I saw the truth underneath it all. He wasn't happy. He was terrified. My stomach knotted. None of this made sense. Why would my own husband be afraid of me being alive? Plus, I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way my entire body suddenly felt like it didn't belong to me. The officers around us gave us space, murmuring about next steps. Someone handed me a bottle of water. Another officer offered to call a doctor. Ethan, meanwhile, kept his hands on my arms, grounding me in place. I felt like a chess piece being moved into position. Slowly, I lifted my gaze to meet his. "Why did you come back?" The words replayed over and over in my head, each time unraveling something deeper. A horrible, gnawing feeling settled in my chest. I needed to find out what had really happened. And I needed to do it fast. Because for the first time in my life I was looking at my husband, and I wasn't sure if I had ever really known him at all. Ethan's grip on my arms was firm, his fingers pressing into my skin like he was holding on for dear life. But his eyes, those familiar, once loving eyes, told a different story. He wasn't relieved. He wasn't overjoyed. He was terrified. The police officers still hovered nearby, their voices blending into a low murmur. Some were discussing next steps, others whispering about the miracle of my return. But all I could focus on was the man in front of me. The husband who had supposedly spent weeks searching for me, only to look like he'd seen a ghost the moment I walked through those doors. "Why did you come back?" His whispered words still rang in my ears. I forced myself to swallow the rising nausea, forcing my lips into something that resembled a weak smile. I don't remember much," I said, my voice shaky, hesitant. I don't know how I got here." Ethan exhaled sharply, a flicker of something unreadable flashing across his face. His grip loosened slightly. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice just loud enough for the officers to hear. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." The warmth in his voice was meant to be comforting, but I felt none of it. Something was very, very wrong. A detective stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Mrs. Lawson will need to ask you a few questions," he said gently, "just to understand what happened." I nodded, but before I could answer, Ethan stepped in. "She's exhausted," he cut in quickly, his arm wrapping around my waist in a possessive grip. "Can we take her home first? She's been through enough." The detective hesitated, his eyes flickering to me. "Mrs. Lawson?" My mouth felt dry. The weight of Ethan's arm on my waist, the pressure of his body so close to mine. It felt suffocating. Like a silent warning. I swallowed hard. I think I need some rest," I managed to say. Ethan's grip tightened slightly, but I ignored it. The detective nodded, though I didn't miss the way his eyes lingered on me, as if something about this didn't sit right with him either. "All right," he said. "But we'll need to schedule a follow-up soon." Ethan nodded quickly, too quickly. "Of course." Before I could blink, I was being led out of the station, cameras flashing as reporters swarmed toward us. I flinched, my body tensing, but Ethan's grip only grew stronger, guiding me through the chaos like a lifeline. Like he was making sure I didn't run. As we approached his car, he finally leaned in, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "We'll talk when we get home." I froze, my blood running cold. That wasn't concern. That was a warning. The car ride was silent, the only sound coming from the occasional hum of the engine and the distant echo of traffic outside. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles pale. I sat stiffly in the passenger seat, my fingers digging into my thighs. The city lights blurred past us, but I barely saw them. My mind was racing, my thoughts a tangled mess of confusion and growing dread. Where had I been for the past few weeks? Why couldn't I remember anything? And why did my own husband act like my return was the worst thing that could have happened? I turned my head slightly, watching him out of the corner of my eye. His jaw was clenched, his lips pressed into a thin line. This wasn't the Ethan I had married. Or maybe I had never really known him at all. We pulled into the driveway of our home. Our home. But as I stared at the house, something inside me twisted. The porch light was on, casting a warm glow over the entrance. The lawn was neatly trimmed, the flower beds well maintained. From the outside, everything looked the same. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew. Everything had changed. The scent hit me first. It wasn't mine. The air was thick with a perfume I didn't recognize. Floral, almost sickly sweet. I froze in the doorway, my fingers clenching around the strap of my bag. The furniture was the same. The walls were the same. But the small details, the things that made this my home, were gone. The throw blanket I always left on the couch? Nowhere in sight. My favorite coffee mug? Replaced. The framed wedding photo that used to sit on the entryway table? Vanished. Instead, a different picture sat there. A newer one. Ethan. And another woman. I barely processed the sharp intake of breath that escaped my lips. My heart pounded as I stepped closer, my eyes scanning the image. She was young. Pretty. Blonde. And she was laughing, her arm looped around Ethan's like she belonged there. Like she lived there. My stomach twisted violently. Ethan stepped in behind me, his presence looming like a shadow. "You must be tired," he said, his voice unreadable. "Why don't you go rest?" I turned slowly, my breath shallow. "Who is she?" His expression didn't change. "She's no one. No one." A stranger had been in my home, wearing my life like a costume. And my husband, my loving husband, had moved on like I was already dead. I swallowed, my throat dry. "How long has she been staying here?" Ethan exhaled through his nose, his jaw tightening. "Sarah." "How long?" I demanded, my voice sharper now. His eyes darkened. "A few weeks." "A few weeks." The exact amount of time I had been missing. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't just moving on. This was planned. Ethan sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. Look, I didn't think you were coming back, all right? His voice was softer now, almost pleading. I was mourning. I was lonely. And I needed someone. The words sliced through me like a blade. I needed someone. Not I missed you. Not I was searching for you. Just I needed someone. My fingers curled into fists. My mind was spinning, my chest tightening with something raw and ugly. He never thought I'd return. He never wanted me to. And now, as I stood in what used to be my home, staring at a life I no longer recognized, one thought burned in my mind. I wasn't just a missing person. I was a problem Ethan had already solved. And now I had come back to ruin everything. The weight of Ethan's words settled over me like a heavy fog. I didn't think you were coming back. There was. The truth so casually spoken like an afterthought. He had already rewritten his life, already replaced me. He had let the world believe I was gone, because in his mind I was. I tore my gaze away from the framed picture, my pulse hammering against my ribs. My fingers curled into fists at my sides, nails biting into my palms. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. Ethan sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, Sarah, I know this is a lot. I stepped back. Just enough to put distance between us. Just enough to breathe. You told them I was missing. My voice felt foreign to my own ears. You went on TV. You cried for me. His eyes flickered, just for a second before he forced a solemn nod. Because I thought you were gone. I watched him closely, my mind racing. And you never got any messages from me? No calls? No signs that I was alive? Another hesitation. A flicker of something in his expression too fast to catch. Then a slow, measured shake of his head. No. Liar. I inhaled deeply, forcing the air into my lungs, steadying my thoughts. I needed to think, to be careful. Because something wasn't adding up. Ethan wasn't just shocked to see me alive. He was rattled. Panicked. And then it clicked. If I had truly been missing, if I had disappeared without warning, how had he moved on so quickly? How had he known I wasn't coming back? Plus, I swallowed hard. How did I disappear, Ethan? My voice was softer now, deliberate. What did you tell them happened to me? He hesitated again. I told them I didn't know. A safe answer. Too safe. I took a step forward, forcing him to meet my gaze. Then why does it feel like you were ready for it? His jaw clenched. Sarah. Why does it feel like you needed me to disappear? The words landed between us like a slap. His lips parted, but nothing came out. I saw it again, that flicker of panic beneath his carefully constructed mask. He hadn't prepared for this. He hadn't planned for me to stand here demanding answers. And then he recovered. A slow exhale, a forced chuckle. You're being paranoid. Paranoid. A familiar word. One he had used before during arguments when I had called him out on his lies. When I had pointed out inconsistencies in his stories. I felt my stomach turn. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. I stepped past him, walking deeper into the house, past the scent of her perfume, past the remnants of a life I no longer recognized. My feet carried me toward the bedroom, my body moving on instinct. Something told me the truth was hidden there. Ethan followed. Sarah, wait. I didn't stop. The moment I pushed open the bedroom door, my breath hitched. Everything. Gone. My clothes. My books. My jewelry. Every single trace of me had been erased. In its place. Her things. Her dresses hanging neatly in the closet. Her shoes tucked carefully under the bed. I turned slowly, my throat burning. How long did it take? My voice was eerily calm. How long before you started replacing me? Ethan exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. Sarah, listen. Did you ever love me? His head snapped up, his expression darkening. Of course I did. Then why does it feel like I was never here? Silence. For the first time he had no answer. And that's when I knew. He had planned this. This wasn't grief. This wasn't moving on. This was deliberate. I turned toward the nightstand, my fingers curling around the drawer handle. Before Ethan could stop me, I yanked it open. Papers. Dozens of them. My eyes darted over the documents. Bank statements, insurance policies, legal forms. And then I saw it. My death certificate. I froze. My vision blurred. Sarah. I held up a hand, silencing him. My pulse roared in my ears. Date of death. 2 weeks ago. Cause unknown. My breath shuddered. You declared me dead? Ethan's expression twisted into something unreadable. You knew I was alive, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a freight train. And you wanted me gone. For the first time his mask cracked completely. He didn't deny it. Didn't even try. Instead his shoulders slumped and something in his eyes shifted, from panic to something colder. Sharper. Sarah. His voice was dangerously soft. I need you to listen to me. I shook my head, stepping back, my heart hammering. You tried to erase me. I needed to, he snapped. You were ruining everything. His words hit me harder than any slap ever could. Ruining. That's what I had been to him. A problem. A mistake. A piece of his life he had decided to erase. I forced myself to breathe, my hands trembling. The insurance. The house. The other woman. He had planned it all. And now I had come back and destroyed his perfect alibi. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. I thought you were gone. It was easier this way. Easier. I let out a soft, humorless laugh. For you, maybe. He took a step closer. You need to understand, Sarah. I backed away. I understand perfectly. My voice was barely above a whisper. You wanted me dead. Another silence. He didn't deny it. And that was all the confirmation I needed. Something inside me shifted. This wasn't shock anymore. This wasn't fear. This was rage. Cold, steady, and unstoppable. Ethan had spent weeks crafting his perfect lie, weaving a story that would make him look like the grieving husband while erasing me from existence. But the one thing he never expected? I had survived. And now I was going to make sure he didn't get away with it. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood there, staring at the man who once vowed to love me, realizing for the first time that every word had been a lie. Ethan didn't see me as a wife. He saw me as a problem. And now he was looking at me like a problem that had come back to haunt him. The weight of that realization settled deep in my bones. My body felt disconnected from my mind, as if I were floating outside of myself, watching this horror unfold. I had spent weeks lost in the dark, struggling to remember what had happened to me. But now, standing in the home that no longer felt like mine, I understood the truth. Ethan had erased me. And someone else had stepped into my place. I turned, scanning the room, my pulse hammering. Her scent lingered in the air, that sickly sweet perfume clinging to the fabric of the curtains, the pillows, the sheets. The closet doors were slightly open, revealing silk blouses and dresses in colors I never would have chosen. A pair of heels rested by the bed, delicate, feminine, too small to be mine. The rage inside me boiled higher. Who is she? My voice came out quieter than I expected, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath it. Ethan sighed, rubbing a hand over his jaw. Sarah. Who is she? I repeated, sharper this time. His expression darkened, irritation flickering in his eyes. It doesn't matter. The response sent a fresh wave of fury crashing through me. I stepped closer, shoving the death certificate into his chest. Does she know about this? My voice trembled, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something colder, something steady. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. That was all I needed to know. A bitter laugh bubbled in my throat. You've got to be kidding me. I gestured around the room, my hands shaking. You moved on this fast? You replaced me like I was, what? A pet? A piece of furniture. His nostrils flared, his body tensing like he was holding something back. You were gone, Sarah. I shook my head. I was missing. And you didn't even wait long enough to pretend you cared. Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his hair. What did you expect me to do? Sit around mourning forever? I expected you to at least act like my life mattered to you. The words hit like a slap. A heavy silence stretched between us, thick with everything we weren't saying. Ethan was the first to break it. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. I didn't plan for this, he muttered, more to himself than to me. I thought. His voice cut off. I narrowed my eyes. You thought what? He hesitated. I took a step closer. You thought I was dead, didn't you? Ethan's lips parted, but nothing came out. He had no excuse. No way to talk himself out of this. I let out a slow breath, my mind spinning. If he had truly believed I was dead, then that meant one thing. The other woman, the woman who had stepped into my life, thought so too. A sick, twisted part of me wondered how much she knew. Had she moved in under the pretense that Ethan was grieving? Or had she been there all along waiting for me to disappear? I needed to find out. I turned on my heel, heading for the bedroom door. "Where are you going?" Ethan asked, alarm sparking in his voice. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I grabbed my coat from the hallway hook, my fingers numb as I shoved my arms through the sleeves. Ethan followed, his footsteps heavy behind me. "Sarah, stop." I ignored him, throwing open the front door. The cool night air hit my face, but it barely registered. My mind was too focused, too set on one thing. I needed to see her. I needed to look into the eyes of the woman who had taken my place. Ethan caught my wrist before I could step outside. "Sarah, please. Let it go." "Let it go?" I stared at him, my pulse thundering. "You declared me dead," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You built a life without me. You lied to everyone." I shook my head. "I'm not letting anything go." His grip tightened. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I yanked my arm free, stepping out onto the porch. "You never loved me, Ethan. You loved the idea of me. And the second I became inconvenient, you replaced me." He didn't deny it. Instead, his shoulders sagged, and for the first time I saw it. Not regret. Not guilt. Relief. He had gotten away with it. He'll know. I turned away from him and started walking. I didn't know exactly where she lived, but it wasn't hard to figure out. The moment I scrolled through Ethan's social media, I found her. Her name was Olivia. She had dark blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a perfect, glowing smile. The kind of woman who looked effortlessly beautiful, polished. Like the type of person Ethan wanted people to believe he deserved. And then I found the address. It was a townhouse on the other side of the city. Cozy, expensive. The kind of place you bought when you were starting a new chapter. I didn't think. I just drove. 20 minutes later, I was standing in front of her door, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. My heart pounded, but I ignored it. I had come this far. I wasn't turning back now. I knocked once. Then again. A few seconds later, the door opened. Olivia stood there, her expression shifting from polite curiosity to confusion. "Can I help you?" I stared at her, my pulse hammering. She looked exactly like her pictures. Perfect, effortless, radiant. And completely clueless. He had no idea who I was. No idea that the man she was with had built their relationship on a lie. No idea that the woman she thought was dead was standing right in front of her. I took a slow breath. "I think we need to talk." Her brows furrowed. "Do I know you?" I exhaled, steadying myself. Then I hit her with the truth. "I'm Sarah Lawson." I watched her closely, waiting for it to register. She blinked. What? Her face went pale. She knew the name. She knew exactly who I was. And that's when I realized. She wasn't just some innocent bystander. She had known all along. Olivia's face drained of color. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I watched the realization settle into her eyes. The unmistakable flicker of panic. The sharp inhale of breath as she took a half step back. She knew exactly who I was. For a brief second, I saw the war inside her. The struggle between pretending she had no clue and admitting the truth. But I didn't give her a chance to choose. "You knew," I said quietly, stepping forward, my voice eerily calm. "Didn't you?" Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Don't lie to me." My voice was sharper now, cutting through the cold night air between us. "You knew I was alive, Olivia." She exhaled shakily, glancing over her shoulder as if searching for an escape. When she looked back at me, something else flickered in her expression. Guilt. I didn't know at first, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I swear I didn't." A hollow laugh escaped my lips. "At first." I repeated. "So at some point you did know." She looked away. "Ethan told me you were gone," she said after a long pause. "That you'd disappeared without a trace." I could hear the tremble in her voice, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. "Did you ever question it?" I asked, my eyes narrowing. "Did you ever stop to wonder why a wife would just vanish?" She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of the door. Or were you too busy playing house in my bed?" The words struck like a slap and Olivia flinched. I didn't, she shook her head. It wasn't like that. I took another step forward, forcing her to look at me. Then what was it like? I asked, my voice sharp. Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like you replaced me before my body was even cold. She inhaled sharply, her gaze darting around as if looking for a way out. Did he tell you about the life insurance? I continued, my voice dropping lower. Did he mention the money he was about to collect? The death certificate he had printed. Her breath hitched. I caught it. That tiny, almost imperceptible reaction. He knew. She had known for a while. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I kept my expression unreadable. I needed her to talk. I needed her to confess. How long? I asked, my tone steady. How long before you realized I wasn't just missing? She squeezed her eyes shut. For a moment I thought she wouldn't answer. Then her shoulders sagged. 2 weeks, she admitted, barely audible. I sucked in a sharp breath. 2 weeks. 14 days of pretending. Of sleeping in my house, sitting at my dinner table, wrapping herself around my husband while knowing that I was supposed to be dead. My hands curled into fists at my sides. And you stayed. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. She had chosen silence. She had chosen him. I didn't know what to do, she whispered. I wasn't a part of this. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You weren't a part of it, I repeated bitterly. You just benefited from it. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her expression. A flicker of something raw. Shame. I tried to leave, she murmured. I told him I didn't want any part of it, but she hesitated, then shook her head. He made it clear that leaving wasn't an option. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? She hesitated. Ethan isn't who you think he is. I let out a sharp breath. Oh, believe me, Olivia, I know exactly who he is. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. Then you know what he's capable of. A strange tension settled between us, thick and suffocating. The realization struck me all at once. She wasn't just afraid of me. She was afraid of him. I took a slow step back, my mind racing. How deep does this go? I asked, my voice quieter now. She hesitated again, but I caught it. The way she clenched her fingers around the fabric of her sweater, the nervous dart of her eyes toward the street, as if someone could be watching. Ethan, her voice trailed off and she swallowed hard. He's not just lying to you. A chill crawled up my spine. What does that mean? She looked at me then, truly looked at me, and for the first time since she had opened the door, she seemed to understand. I wasn't the enemy. We were both trapped in the same nightmare. A long silence stretched between us before she finally whispered, I think you were never supposed to come back. The words landed like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. For weeks I had felt it in my bones, that something was missing, that something wasn't right. I had assumed Ethan had wanted me gone for his own selfish reasons. But Olivia's expression told me there was more. Much more. Something darker. Something I wasn't prepared for. I forced myself to breathe, my mind racing. What are you saying? She exhaled shakily. I think Ethan wasn't just covering up your disappearance. She met my gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. I think he planned it. A cold, creeping dread settled into my bones. This wasn't just a betrayal. This wasn't just infidelity. This was something else entirely. A slow, methodical, premeditated plan to erase me. My heart pounded, my skin prickling with cold sweat. Everything I thought I knew about Ethan, about what had happened to me, shifted. I had assumed I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That maybe I had gotten lost. That maybe there was some explanation for the missing pieces in my mind. But what if there wasn't? What if my disappearance wasn't an accident? What if Ethan had made it happen? The thought nearly knocked the air from my lungs. Olivia stepped forward, lowering her voice. He's dangerous, Sarah. I swallowed hard, my pulse roaring in my ears. I need to know everything. Her lips parted as if she was about to say something. And then suddenly her eyes flicked past me. Her breath hitched. A slow, creeping terror spread across her face. And before I could turn around, I knew. We weren't alone. Olivia's face went pale, her eyes frozen on something behind me. I didn't turn around right away. My instincts screamed at me to move, to react, to run, but I forced myself to stay still. My fingers curled at my sides, nails digging into my palms, steadying myself. I needed control. Slowly, carefully I turned my head. Ethan stood at the end of the driveway, hands in the pockets of his jacket, watching us. The streetlight above him cast long, eerie shadows across his face, making his expression unreadable. But I didn't need to see it clearly to know. He wasn't here to talk. A chill ran through me. My body screamed to step back, but I held my ground, forcing my face into something unreadable. If he was expecting fear, I wouldn't give it to him. "Ladies," Ethan said smoothly, his voice deceptively calm. "Didn't expect to see you two getting so close." Olivia's breath hitched beside me. I felt her inch away, retreating into the safety of the doorway. I didn't move. I wouldn't let him see me hesitate. "Ethan." I forced his name out evenly, my voice void of the shaking that threatened to take over my body. "Didn't expect to see you here either." A slow, calculated smile tugged at his lips. "Well, you know me. Always full of surprises." The way he said it made my stomach turn. This was a warning. A message. He was reminding me that he had been one step ahead this entire time. I had no idea how much he had seen. If he had heard Olivia's confession, if he had been watching the entire time, waiting for the perfect moment to make his move. I needed to be careful. I swallowed down the bile rising in my throat and lifted my chin. "What do you want?" Ethan tilted his head as if the question genuinely amused him. "I think you know the answer to that." The weight of his words settled between us, thick and suffocating. I needed to act fast. "I was just catching up with Olivia," I said, keeping my tone light, almost casual. "It's funny actually. We had a lot to talk about." Ethan's jaw tightened. A small reaction, but I caught it. He didn't like that. "Good." Olivia let out a nervous breath, shifting behind me. I think you should go, Ethan." Ethan didn't even glance at her. His gaze remained locked on mine, assessing, calculating. "Is that what you think, Sarah?" My heart pounded. My fingers twitched at my sides, but I kept them still. If I played this wrong, if I let him see the fear threatening to consume me, I was done. I forced myself to smile. "I think we have unfinished business." Ethan's eyes darkened, but there was something else behind them now. Amusement. He thought he still had the upper hand. Let him believe it. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. Olivia sucked in a sharp breath behind me, but I ignored her. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about me. I was done being afraid. Ethan's lips twitched as if he were barely holding back a smirk. "You sure you want to do this here?" I tilted my head, mirroring his casual stance. "Would you rather do it somewhere else?" His expression shifted slightly. A flicker of hesitation. He hadn't expected me to push back. I held his gaze, steady and unwavering. I needed him to believe I wasn't a threat. That I wasn't looking for revenge. That I was willing to play along. Finally, he let out a breathy chuckle, shaking his head. "You always were stubborn." I forced a smile. "And you always were predictable." A flash of something crossed his face. Something unreadable, something dangerous, but it was gone before I could place it. He studied me for another long moment before finally nodding. "Let's go home." I knew what he was doing. He wanted to get me alone. But that was fine. Because now I wanted the same thing. The drive back to the house was suffocatingly silent. Ethan kept his hands steady on the wheel, his posture relaxed. To an outsider, he looked like a husband simply driving his wife home. But I knew better. He was thinking. Calculating. So was I. I glanced at my reflection in the window. My face was calm, unreadable. But beneath the surface, my mind was moving a mile a minute. Ethan had spent weeks crafting his perfect lie, making the world believe he was a grieving husband. But he had made one mistake. He had underestimated me. He thought I would run. He thought I would break. But I wasn't going anywhere. I was going to end this. And I was going to make sure he never saw it coming. When we pulled into the driveway, Ethan cut the engine but didn't move. For a moment we sat in silence, the tension thick between us. Then he turned to me, his expression unreadable. "You never told me," he said quietly. I kept my face neutral. "Told you what?" His fingers tapped against the steering wheel. "How you got back." A slow, sharp smile curved my lips. "Some things are better left a mystery." Ethan exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "You always did love playing games." I met his gaze. "Only when I know I'm going to win." A flicker of something crossed his face. A warning. Then, without another word, he opened his door and stepped out. I followed, my pulse steady, my hands relaxed at my sides. I was walking into a cage with a monster. But what he didn't know. I wasn't the prey anymore. I was the hunter. The front door clicked shut behind us, sealing me in. Ethan walked ahead without a word, his posture relaxed but his movements precise, controlled. The air inside the house felt thicker than before, pressing down on me as if the walls themselves were bracing for what was coming. I followed him into the kitchen, every step deliberate. My heartbeat was steady, my breath controlled. I had spent too much time reacting, too much time being caught off guard. Not anymore. This time I was the one in control. Ethan pulled out a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, poured himself a glass and took a slow sip. His eyes met mine over the rim. "You've changed," he murmured. I tilted my head, studying him. "Did you expect me to be the same?" His lips curved slightly, but it wasn't a smile. "No," he admitted. "I expected you to be broken." I let the words settle between us, let him think they would rattle me. But they didn't. They only confirmed what I already knew. He had never expected me to return. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You spent weeks crying on TV, convincing everyone you were devastated. But the second you saw me walk into that police station..." I let my voice drop, my eyes narrowing. "You weren't relieved, Ethan. You were terrified." His fingers tensed around the glass. For a brief second his carefully crafted facade flickered and I caught it, that sharp edge of panic, the crack in his mask. He wasn't as composed as he wanted me to believe. I pressed forward. "Why don't you tell me why?" Ethan exhaled, setting his glass down with a soft clink. "You don't want to play this game with me, Sarah." I pushed off the counter, closing the space between us. "Oh, but I do." A slow, dangerous silence stretched between us. I could see the battle in his eyes, the calculation, the weighing of risks. He was deciding how much to reveal, how much he could still manipulate. I smiled. "I already know about the insurance money. About Olivia. About the death certificate." His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I tilted my head. "You thought I'd disappear forever, didn't you?" Still he said nothing. So I took another step forward, lowering my voice to a whisper. "Or were you planning to make sure I did?" There was the flicker of rage, the slight flare of his nostrils, the tension in his jaw. Ethan had always been good at hiding his emotions. But I knew him too well. I had just pushed the right button. He sighed, shaking his head. "You think you're clever, Sarah. But you don't have proof." He was trying to turn it around, to make me doubt myself. But I didn't need proof. I only needed to make him think I had it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. His eyes followed the movement, his expression sharpening. I tapped the screen, playing back the recording. "Ethan isn't who you think he is. I think you were never supposed to come back. He's dangerous, Sarah." The color drained from his face. It was Olivia's voice. The recording I had secretly taken while she spoke to me outside her townhouse. I had caught her confession. And now so had he. Ethan's lips parted slightly before he forced them shut. His eyes flickered toward the front door. Calculating, considering. He was running through every option in his mind. I let him sit with the weight of it, let him feel the tightening noose around his throat. Finally he let out a slow breath. When he looked back at me, something in his expression had changed. The performance was gone. The mask had shattered. And in its place was the man he had been hiding all along. A man without remorse. A man who had planned my disappearance like it was a business transaction. A man who wasn't afraid of being caught, because he still thought he could get away with it. "You think that recording is enough?" His voice was eerily calm. "It's not a confession. It's speculation." I arched a brow. "Maybe." I took another step closer, closing the space between us completely. I could feel his breath now, sharp and controlled. "But imagine how it'll sound when I hand it over to the police. Along with your death certificate for me." His eyes darkened. "That's enough to open an investigation," I continued, my voice soft but sharp. "Enough to make people start asking questions." Ethan's fingers flexed at his sides. For the first time I saw it. Fear. Not because I had proof, but because I had leverage. I smiled. "So tell me, Ethan. Do you still think I'm broken?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Because he knew the truth. I wasn't broken. I was the one holding the knife now. And I had just decided where to strike. Ethan didn't say a word as I turned and walked toward the hallway. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs, but I kept my pace steady. I could feel his eyes burning into my back, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of looking over my shoulder. I had won this round. But the game wasn't over yet. I reached my bedroom, the one that no longer felt like mine, and shut the door behind me, locking it with a quiet click. I leaned against the wood, exhaling slowly. I needed to think. I had rattled him. That much was clear. But Ethan was dangerous when cornered. He wasn't going to let me walk away that easily. Which meant I had to act first. I pulled out my phone, staring at Olivia's contact. My fingers hovered over the screen. Could I trust her? Maybe. Maybe not. But I wasn't going to do this alone. Not anymore. I hit the call button. The phone rang once. Twice. Then, Sarah. Olivia's voice was hushed, anxious. I took a deep breath. We need to finish what we started. Pause. Then a slow exhale. Tell me what to do. Olivia's breath was shaky through the phone. Tell me what to do. I gripped the device tighter, my heartbeat loud in my ears. I had expected hesitation, doubt. But her voice was steady, determined. Ethan thinks he's untouchable, I murmured, pacing the small space of the bedroom. We need to make him understand he's not. Pause. Then Olivia whispered, how? I exhaled. We hit him where it hurts. There was silence on the line, but I knew she was listening. He built his perfect story, I continued. The grieving husband. The heartbroken man who lost the love of his life. I stopped, staring at my reflection in the dark window. We're going to burn that lie to the ground. Olivia sucked in a breath. You mean, expose him? Yes. She hesitated. He'll fight back. I'm counting on it. Because I had learned something in the past few hours. Ethan didn't just enjoy control, he needed it. He thrived on the idea that he was always one step ahead. That was his weakness. He underestimated people. He underestimated me. I wasn't broken. I wasn't running. I was about to ruin him. I barely slept that night. I stayed locked in the bedroom, my mind running through every possibility, every reaction Ethan might have, every move he might make. I had to stay ahead. By morning, the house was silent. Too silent. I stepped into the hallway, bracing myself, but Ethan was nowhere to be seen. His car was gone. He was planning something. Good. So was I. I grabbed my bag and left. Olivia was already waiting when I arrived. She looked different. The nervous energy she carried before had settled into something sharper. She was ready. You're sure about this? She asked. I nodded. It's time. We sat in her car, going over the plan one last time. Every detail mattered. Ethan had spent weeks building his lie, manipulating the narrative. But we had something he didn't. The truth. It wasn't just the recording. It wasn't just the death certificate. It was everything. His behavior. His rushed decisions. The money trail that led directly to him. And soon everyone would see it. Olivia exhaled. What happens after? I turned to her, my expression unreadable. After. I repeated. She nodded. Once he's exposed. Once the world knows. I thought about it. Thought about the years I spent loving a man who had planned my erasure. Thought about the way he had looked at me when I walked back into that police station, not with relief but with fear. I walk away, I said simply. And I don't look back. The first call went to the police. Olivia gave her statement, detailing everything she knew, what Ethan had told her, how he had convinced her to stay quiet. How she had realized too late what he was capable of. The second call went to a reporter. The same reporter who had broadcasted Ethan's grief, his desperate pleas for my return. I told her I had a better story. She listened. And then I sent her everything. The death certificate. The insurance documents. The recording. She called me back within minutes. How soon can you meet? The news broke within hours. Headlines spread like wildfire. Husband who begged for missing wife's return accused of faking her death. Grieving husband or master manipulator? Shocking new evidence. Was Sarah Lawson's disappearance planned? I sat in Olivia's living room watching it unfold. Watching the world finally see Ethan for who he really was. The perfect husband. The grieving man. The liar. The fraud. The man who had tried to erase his own wife. Ethan called. I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. And again. By the sixth call he stopped. I stared at my phone, fingers hovering over the screen. I could call him back. Confront him. Ask him why. But I already knew the answer. He did it because he could. Because he thought he'd get away with it. Because I had been nothing more than an inconvenience to him. Not anymore. I deleted the missed calls. And then I turned off my phone. By evening, the police were at Ethan's house. I watched the footage on TV. Officers surrounding the property, reporters shouting questions. Ethan stepped outside, his face pale, his jaw clenched. For the first time there were no tears. No act. He was caught. He knew it. I watched as he was led to the squad car, cameras flashing in his face. The same cameras that had once captured his grief were now capturing his downfall. Poetic. Fitting. The last image I saw before shutting the TV off was his face. Not angry. Not pleading. Just empty. Because he knew. I had won. I packed that night. Not much. Just what I needed. Olivia sat on the bed watching me. Where will you go? I zipped up the bag. Anywhere but here. She hesitated. You could stay. Start over. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. I already have. She nodded, understanding. I had spent years being Sarah Lawson, Ethan's wife. That woman was gone. It was time to figure out who I was without him. The morning air was crisp as I stepped outside, my bag slung over my shoulder. Olivia stood at the door watching me go. If you ever need anything. I nodded. I know. We weren't friends. Not really. But we had survived something together. That was enough. I walked toward the cab waiting at the curb. As I climbed inside, I took one last look at the place I had once called home. I didn't feel sadness. Or anger. Or loss. Just freedom. The cab pulled away and I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for years. Ethan had spent so much time trying to control my ending. But in the end, he hadn't written my final chapter. I had. And it started now. I never thought I would survive, but surviving wasn't enough. I took back control. I exposed the truth. And in the end, I walked away without looking back. Ethan thought he could write my story, but he never realized that the final chapter would be mine to tell. If this story resonated with you, share it. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's setting yourself free.